So when we first started recording this, it was Tuesday of Preakness week. It is now Thursday of Preakness week. In that time, the Preakness field has shrunk from 9 horses to 8 horses. Your morning line favorite, Muth, was withdrawn. And so now, in order to better serve you and to more accurately assess what the race might look like now, we are recording an updated version here of our handicapping the Preakness Stakes using race lens and stat lines. Dan Tordjman still here with my friends Corey, Christina, and Scott, dressed slightly differently now. Thankfully, we've all changed and hopefully showered since the last time we convened. But a lot of things remain the same, including the specials that you can get on Equibase this week, and also a reminder: no sweat first bet up to $500 presented by FanDuel Racing, our partner for this show. Without further ado, let's jump back into this race. I think initially, when we had discussed this race, we were all on Muth. We were excited about the possibility of him potentially going to the front or just sitting off the pace and potentially, kind of rolling and just kind of walking away with this Preakness. Now everything changes. I think the first discussion we might want to get into is around pace. And let's just kick it off with Christina. Let me just go to you quickly on this. How do you think the withdrawal of Muth affects the pace and ultimately how this race might unfold?
Yeah, Dan, for me, I mean, it affects the pace really significantly, and it really is what pushed me in the direction of the horse that I'm going to end up putting on top in here, because with Muth and Imagination, the other Baffert horse in the race originally, I think we were going to see those two drafting alongside each other on the front, whether it was Muth on the lead and Imagination because he's drawn outside, or vice versa, because I think Imagination probably a little bit quicker. And I did not see those horses coming back at all. And I saw Muth, is very much able to kick clear. With Muth out of the race, I really think Frankie Dettori is going to send Imagination to the lead. I think he's very much going to commit to that position. And this is how Bob Baffert trains. He trains for speed. He trains for stamina. And I think that's going to be their tactics. But I don't see Imagination as having the kind of quality that Muth does. I took a look back at the Kentucky Derby this morning, and I really watched the trip for Catching Freedom, and I didn't pick up on this until now. He completely followed Mystic Dan through that race. I think Flavien Prat got shuffled back a little bit more so than he wanted to going into the first turn. You could tell that he was trying to be somewhat closer, but a lot of other horses kind of fanned over in front of him. He gets shuffled back. I don't think Catching Freedom really has the speed to be close enough to Imagination. I'm concerned about the quick turnaround for him and for Mystic Dan, but I'll go to Tuscan Gold, who we talked a lot about in the first podcast, the 8 horse. I think the thing about Tuscan Gold is he has enough speed to sit right there behind Imagination, and he gets that first jump, that kind of trip where he seems to be the improving horse. I think he's a better horse than Imagination, and I think he can hold off some of the closers. So I think, to answer your question, the pace changes really severely without a horse like Muth in there. But I do think the early leader is going to be Imagination. Whether or not he can hold on is the question.
If we could take a quick look at the true odds page, we've shown these features off before. When the page loads, you'll see there's sort of a race projection, and then also on the left side, what we'll click here, you saw that little icon on the left. When you click it for a horse who scratches, you see how it removes from the race projection. So you can get a better sense for how the horses might stack up through the various stages of the race. And that's a really neat feature, again, before race day. Once race day comes, and the fields are fully set, the horses will automatically sort of disappear from this. But in the interim, as you're trying to handicap it several days out, you have this option of just removing the horse. So now you can see, as Christina references, the 9 all alone on that early lead, with Tuscan Gold sitting just behind, and then the others further behind. Corey, you made a very compelling, very convincing, not that we needed convincing because we were all on Muth too, but you made an argument that was ironclad on Muth. I wonder where you go from there.
Yeah, well, Muth seemed to me like the class and the best horse, and sitting on go, all of the stuff that we had talked about. And so when Muth scratched, I completely agree with Christina that it changed everything on the pace. It changed all the way I was looking at the horses that might be off, coming from off. I think it's a significant change of events. Now, what I did do was I went with the Baffert, the other Baffert in there. He didn't ship this horse across the country for nothing. This horse has got a little bit of class, a little bit of talent to it. I'm not sure that it is up to the level of Muth or even some of the others in here, but I think pace makes the race in a lot of ways, and he's going to have the lead. And so if you look at this, I looked at, okay, where have we seen this move from Baffert before? How about last year with National Treasure? You know, comes out of the Santa Anita Derby, didn't win it. Same thing with Imagination. Shows up again on the at the Preakness, going to be on the front end, runs on the front end the entire trip, wire to wire. Okay, wins the race. Now we have another horse who's likely going to be on the front end with some speed. Baffert does this. He's going to commit, and he's going to go out to the lead. And there's a little bit of history from Pramana Shift that I pulled up that I wanted to look at. Okay, what does Baffert do in the Preakness with this configuration and with front-running horses? And so I took a look. He's had the lead at the half 5 times since 1991 in Preakness. All right. He's won with 3 of them that had the lead after 4 panels. He finished second with the other 2. So all 5 of them first or second in the race when they have the lead at the half. So you got to look at some history there that says when he sends them, they commit and they do pretty well. So I think without a significant other pace chaser in here, this horse could get brave and go all the way around. And when I say that, it's also because I think Frankie Dettori and Bob Baffert, if you look at that combination, boy, it's hard to miss. When they run together, when they are together in a route graded stakes race on dirt, they're 5 of 8 and 7 of 8 in the exacta together. So 63% winning on graded stakes races on dirt together. That's hard to overlook, right? So there's some experience there. There's history there. And I know I mentioned the other night that no horse that Bob Baffert has entered in the Preakness that's been a morning line over 4-1 has ever hit the board. Well, I have to rescind that because I have a feeling this horse is going to go off down at the levels of the post-time odds of all these horses that you're seeing in this list that have all hit the board in the Preakness for Baffert. So I think you'll probably be in the 3-1 category, right around there. And I think that's where you're going to end up seeing that horse go off. So he now just fits the bill of the stat that I had that I used against him to begin with. Now I'm going to use for Imagination. So I think he gets brave, and I think he hangs on, and I think he's sitting on a big one. And now with Muth out, that's where I'm going to head. So on the win end, that's really where I'm looking. Now, underneath, kind of where do you go there and where do you look to try to, play him with something? And I agree with Christina that Catching Freedom is a horse to watch. And I think, honestly, Catching Freedom, I mentioned the other day that I like that horse because of just the angles, just the Brad Cox numbers. I mentioned the 4 of 5 in the exacta when he starts a horse at Churchill and then goes to Pimlico in the next start. I mentioned the 4 for 5 with runners going a mile and 3/16 on the dirt over the past year. Those are huge, right? So I'm going to stick with that with some conviction that he'll be in the photos somewhere. But I also think that Tuscan Gold, Dan, you convinced me. You convinced me the other day on the replay and on the gallop out more than anything that happened in that race. I love the way that horse galloped out. I think he's probably training into this race as well as anybody. He might get a good trip, as you mentioned, from slightly off the pace. And again, because I'm the stats guy, the stat that I can back that up on, Chad Brown, Tyler Gaffalione, graded stakes route races on dirt in their career together, 5 of 12, 42% winners. So 9 of 12 in the money lifetime. So he'll probably be somewhere in there. And I think that's probably a horse that you should look at that's probably peaking at the right time. But still going to go with Imagination to get brave on the front end and win the thing.
Now I feel the pressure of having convinced you to to back a horse. So what took Tuscan Gold does what I expect him to do, which is run a massive race. I think he is sitting on a big race, his 4th career race. But Scott, as I turn to you, you probably had the same thought I had. I mean, after first, obviously, your initial thought is, oh no, Muth is out of the race. You feel bad for everyone involved with the horse, knowing that this had long been a target, and we want to see the horse as fans because we know that there's just potential there is unlimited. So from a racing fan perspective, it's a bummer. But then there's also sort of that the horse player in you says, you know what, maybe this is a better betting opportunity if we're being fair about it and we're looking at the race objectively now. I wonder for you how, because you were also on Muth, how things have changed in terms of maybe how you might approach this race from a handicapping betting perspective. And is there maybe a horse that you didn't have your eyes on initially who now maybe looks a little more appealing to you?
I mean, it gives me a headache, to be honest. I really was looking forward to just trying to be singled or have protection with Muth the whole way. I mean, it makes this a lot more complicated from a tournament standpoint, from a cash standpoint. I mean, it opens up a lot of possibilities, but I mean, I just thought it was pretty simple before. And now I think my strategy changes completely, and now it's going to be price dependent, pace dependent, guessing. I just thought Muth was a lot more. It didn't matter to me if Muth got the lead or was sitting second or third at all. And it matters a great deal now how the race shakes out. I do agree with everyone that Imagination will be on the lead, but I think something goofy could happen in a couple different ways. And I think Seize the Gray decided to sit really close to that pace and had more success in the Pate Mile. And now I wonder if a horse like that gets a little braver. I mean, that was 22 and 44. I mean, as the Pate Mile usually is, pretty quick. But I mean, sat pretty close to that and won the race. I just wonder if they think, well, this horse. I mean, it was a jockey switch. So like, and the both times that Torres has ridden the horse, if you look back, was sitting close to the pace and was gate to wire. I mean, albeit in a sprint a long time ago. But with the jockey change, new tactics, did those tactics carry on? And how? I mean, it doesn't mean he's as fast as Imagination, but how like gung ho is he, or maybe a Just Steel on putting pressure on Imagination. And that being said, the horse to me that has the most room to move up and improve by far is Tuscan Gold. And I think Tuscan Gold doesn't really care. The more the merrier up front, trying to sit with Imagination. So I mean, the one I'm looking most forward to bet is Tuscan Gold, just because I think the horse has a ton of room to improve in the fourth start. We've seen this pattern before. And I just think that race was pretty solid, as we've all analyzed before, in, the first stakes try of the horse's career. And I just think the horse is more likely to be a great horse than someone like Imagination. Like it's rare that you see Imagination's path, like for Bob, like 4 times to break the maiden, then kind of got surprised in the next stakes race. And then all of a sudden we're in the Santa Anita Derby, ran a great race, super tough. But I don't think that like they were like, this horse is going to be great until like a little bit later. And it's always interesting to me about how that goes in the Baffert barn, where everybody's usually a superstar, like from the get-go. I don't have data to back that up. I'm sure somebody can, make a case either way on that, but did run a tough race. I think there's a chance that Imagination holds on either way, just because you saw a lot of fight in the lane in the Santa Anita Derby, and that was impressive. I mean, got headed, came back, took the lead back, and then lost to Stronghold, who ran a pretty good race in the Derby. I mean, I think, what did Stronghold come back and take 7th or something? I mean, ran okay. Tapalo came out and won a sprint. So the horse that Imagination was chasing at the beginning of that race came back and won a sprint versus some fast horses at 7 furlongs at Santa Anita. So I mean, there's some form in that Santa Anita Derby already. So it's like, not that I'm like against the horse. It's just like I had so much confidence in Muth being in any scenario, I didn't care. Whereas Imagination, I feel like if Imagination takes pressure at all, you could see some problems, because you have like whoever gets the better trip out of Mystic Dan and Catching Freedom, and whoever feels better coming out of the Derby. Both those horses can finish. Both those horses are going to get great rides, and with less traffic, I mean, you feel like one of them at least is going to come running. And I'm just hoping Tuscan Gold gets the jump on them, and if Tuscan Gold takes another jump forward, should be the one capable of running the biggest figure in this race in my eyes. But there's so many more unknowns. Like I said, it's a headache. A lot of it's going to be price dependent, what I'm alive to in the day. But right now, if I had to pick, I would take Tuscan Gold in the race.
All right. And you touch on something with price, price dependent, right? We're going to be now wondering what odds are we looking at with these horses as we kind of inch toward post time for the race. And I want to come back to that and maybe, because we did play this game about, what odds do we think this is going to be? What odds do we think this horse is going to be? And we don't have to fully rehash that game, but I think it's worth kind of thinking about at this point. Well, as we sat initially and looked at this race, if we thought Tuscan Gold was a solid play at 6 to 8 to 1, are we going to feel the same if somehow he's 7 to 2 or 3 to 1, which maybe is too, is an exaggeration, but I don't know, maybe it isn't. We'll see how that plays out, and we'll have that conversation. But I did want to pose one other scenario that we have not discussed, going to the 7-horse Just Steel. So we've talked about pace, and Scott, you mentioned Seize the Gray potentially going to the front. To my eyes, and this was a horse I did not like initially at all when handicapping this race, but now I'm looking at this race. So you got Joel Rosario back up. If you go back to some of this horse's earliest races, his second career race, third career race, fourth career race, Rosario's on him, and they're doing 22-3, 45 and change. There's 144 in there. The tactic there was to go. This horse has natural early speed. In the Derby, we saw him last out, part of a 4-way go early where he's in between horses, through a half and 46-3, 111-3. This horse can go. And really, it seems to me his only shot at winning this race would be to go from the gate and them send him right out of the gate. And he is drawn inside of Imagination, and I could see the strategy there being, look, let this horse go. Like, if he wants to go, let him go. And then I'm looking D. Wayne Lucas, the Preakness, sending a horse out to the lead. Where have I seen this before? And I immediately had flashbacks to Oxbow. And I completely overlooked Oxbow back then. And I'm like, I'm not going to let this happen again. I just feel, expecting now a shift downward in the odds of a lot of the horses we've discussed, this is one who I'm fairly confident is still going to be at least 8 to 1 to 10 to 1, somewhere in that range. And I might take a shot. Because I think if this horse gets loose, I think you're probably detecting from all of us a little bit of skepticism about Imagination. Like, well, yeah, he looks good. He could probably hang on. He could probably do it. but we all have some doubt. Just Steel, in my eyes, moves up significantly with the scratch of Muth, because it's one less horse to contend with on the front, and I think it just makes the mission all the more obvious for Joel Rosario out of the gate. Get to the front and stay there for as long as you can. That's the way I see it. I know, Corey, your take was, that, and Christina as well, you see Imagination on the front end. Is my scenario plausible? Does it seem likely, unlikely, 50-50? How do you read that potential, take on how the race might unfold?
Christina, I'll let you go first on that one.
I can see it happening. I can see them sending Just Steel. I can also see what Scott's saying with them maybe trying to send Seize the Gray. I think, though, for me, the two horses that I ended up really debating between and choosing my top selection were Tuscan Gold and Catching Freedom. And so if all of that does happen, if either one of those send, if both of them do, and they go after a horse like Imagination, I see Catching Freedom as the horse that benefits from all of those different scenarios, because my push to Tuscan Gold was that he gets first jump. But if this race falls apart, Catching Freedom is the horse that comes running every time a race falls apart. You can see that in his form. And I also think Flavien Prat, of everybody in this race, if I'm looking through these jockeys, and these are some of the best riders, in the country, Prat is one of the smartest, and I see him in the right spot all the time. And I think he tried to give this horse a better, closer to the pace trip in the Derby. And I really think, because of the shorter field, he's going to try to put Catching Freedom into the race a little bit more, not on the lead, but just not so far back. So I see where you're going with the pace, but if any of that does happen, it would ultimately push me to Catching Freedom in the end. I don't know about you, Corey, if you would deviate from Imagination or if you're sticking with the pace.
And no, I actually looked at Scott's angle with the Seize the Gray being the horse that may go up there and try to challenge for the lead, because you just saw the pace in that Pat Day Mile. And again, like you said, that's usually a fast race. But I thought, okay, that might be a horse that decides, okay, the tactics worked well there, and still had a little bit left to catch, Vlahos in the end in that race. So maybe that's a scenario where Seize the Gray shows that type of speed again and keeps going. and tries to push a little bit more pressure. Maybe, as you say, Dan, Just Steele shows a lot more pace up front. That may happen. I just don't think it's going to matter. I'll give you one note in real time looking this up. So Dwayne Lucas and Joel Rosario together in graded stakes route races on dirt, 0 for 6 lifetime together in that condition, although 3 times first, second, or third. So maybe he hangs on for a piece of it. So there may be some history there. I just think imagination is going to be committed to Bob Baffert, Frankie Dettori, or bust on the front end. And I think, perhaps we could see a new tactic of imagination if he has to sit just slightly off and, hasn't really done a lot of that. I mean, the San Felipe, maybe just slightly off at the half, but I think it's going to be go and run and then have something left. Bafferts are notorious for having a little bit left at the end of the stretch in these types of conditions. So I think that it may be a close photo in the end, but I'm still going to go with imagination to keep on going and have just enough in the tank to hold off the late runners.
All right, fair enough. I know we've touched on Mystic Dan a little bit. He is the Derby winner. Just to kind of, have a conversation about kind of all the main contenders at this point. I think favoritism in the race is going to be between Mystic Dan and Imagination, with maybe Tuscan Gold not far behind. What do we think about Mystic Dan now? I initially, and I think someone on here initially said, if not all of it, maybe it was off camera, off recording, said, I'm fading Mystic Dan entirely. Are we still fading Mystic Dan? Or, I mean, obviously the scratch, I don't think hurts Mystic Dan. Do we think he can actually win this race? Is there a scenario in which he actually wins this race? Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he stayed closer to that pace than anybody else and won the Derby. I mean, I don't think he's the most likely winner, and I don't have a lot of interest because I think he's going to be way over bet. I mean, he's the only one left that's going to take all the money. So I'll be using more underneath, but I mean, I'm not, if I had the luxury of being alive to multiple horses, I wouldn't want to get beat by the horse.
Corey, I'm not going to name names, but
I don't have any idea what you're talking about. I will say you better watch the weather. That's a scenario that could seriously help Mystic Dan if track comes up really off, or muddy, or you saw what he did in the Southwest, and so maybe that performance shows up if it's a really off track. And I was looking through that today, and I think that it helps him more than any other horse if it is. So watch the weather on that, and that's definitely a scenario where he might win there. But that's really what I'm coming up with, is just an off track scenario to really favor him. But just imagine if he does come through with this and you get the Belmont at Saratoga, the scene there is going to be incredible. So the horse racing world would not hate to see him win this race. I just don't think he's the most likely winner.
Yeah, Christina, I would take it you're pretty much on the same page, right?
I think he can win it. I definitely do. I actually just pulled up the forecast, and it does look like the rain has pushed back to Saturday now. So it does look like we're going to see some weather going through, as we have already. One of the benefits to us now coming back and rehashing this on Thursday is we now have Thorograph figures, and I actually found that really interesting looking at them this morning. So in the Southwest, over a muddy track, Mystic Dan ran a 0. And if you're not familiar with Thorograph, the lower the number, the better the performance. That's the fastest number of the race. So on a track that he loves, he's been the fastest horse. Now, we haven't seen everybody run on an off track, so we don't know if some of them could move up from it. But what I also found really interesting, Dan, is that he ran a 3 in the Arkansas Derby and a 3 in the Kentucky Derby. So that, in my mind, elevates the Arkansas Derby performance a little bit. He ran his race that day. And the fact that he's backed up and paired up back-to-back numbers here with these 3s, if he had more time, you would love it. If you had, 4 or 5 weeks, then he should, in theory, run through those numbers and improve. And that still makes him one of the fastest horses in the race. The 2-week turnaround is tough. The 2-week turnaround, Kenny McPeak has already admitted didn't really work for them back in November in his 2-year-old year, but it's really clear in his overall pattern and his body of work. He's much better at 3. He is getting better in every race. He is running his race every time they send him out there, and he is best over and off track.
All right. So let's close this out with a little exercise in kind of how are we going to bet this race without knowing what the odds are going to look like exactly on Saturday. But if we had to, how would we approach it? I think my initial approach was, you know, I was going to do a big exacta with Muth and Tuscan Gold. As things stand right now, I'm thinking about wheeling Just Steel over Tuscan Gold and Imagination. But that, you know, that could change. That's just my read on the race right now. But I'm thinking, you know, still playing a substantial exacta, but moving Just Steel into the mix as, you know, on my ticket. So essentially replacing Muth on my tickets is Just Steel. Corey, let's go back to you. How do you envision yourself betting this race? You know, at knowing what we know at this moment.
If I guess I'm gonna have to watch the weather because I'll probably have to eat my words here. But if it comes up with just a fast track, I'm fading Mystic Dan, and he'll be the favorite. That I'm tossing him completely out of the trifecta. So I'm just gonna I'm actually gonna box Imagination, Tuscan Gold, and Catching Freedom, and hope for the best there. And I think at that I'll play it multiple times, throwing out the favorite and hoping for just a little value there.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, and it'll be weather dependent, price dependent. I mean, in an ideal world, I'm alive to 4 or 5 of them in picks, but I mean, I don't know that it'll actually happen, depending on how I play the other races. But yeah, right now I would just be looking to make a play on Tuscan Gold and linking up some doubles to a couple others in the tournament, hoping I'm alive to a few prices, and then I can hedge with a win bet. But yeah, I'm not nearly as confident in this race as I was. So also really want to see what, if any more information comes back on workouts, and if anybody's doing better than others coming out of that Derby race. But yeah, I don't know if they're even going to put that out on DRF for this, so I don't know where to get that from.
I'm interested in actually digging in on what the actual clocker said about that last workout with Imagination and Muth working together, because that'd be just interesting. I watched it, but I'm interested to hear what the actual reports are on that.
Same.
Christina, last word.
I would be, well, I'm going to go to XBTV and watch that work. I haven't watched it yet. So I wish I had something to add. I would be taking your same strategy, Dan, but with Tuscan Gold on top, and then Catching Freedom, Mystic Dan. But if it does rain, you got to throw Uncle Heavy in there too. He's 2 for 2 over an off track, the 2 horse. So I think he moves up a lot if we end up with an off track.
It's funny. I initially, you know, I like Uncle Heavy a little bit too. I've kind of pushed him to the back of my mind a little bit. I just thought he and Catching Freedom, even though the case was made that he could stay a little closer to the pace, I thought the scratch probably hurt both of them. I just see them both being pretty pace dependent. But yeah, look, if you're going to try to connect something in a try, especially, but even in exacta, if you like Uncle Heavy at all, that, you know, to your point, Christina, you know, I think wet track horse moves up, and if you can, you know, if you do see a 3-way pace go, I mean, I don't see obviously both Lucas horses going. That would make no sense. For what it's worth, I was at the Alibi breakfast this morning at Pimlico, and Lucas was essentially roasting Kenny McPeak. It was like a Tom Brady, like the sequel to the Tom Brady roast. It was really funny, actually. And he goes, oh, I guess I should say something about my horse, shouldn't I? And so he goes, yeah, he's like, so, you know, and he just kind of goes in talking about Just Steel, and he's like, all right, thank you very much. And he just walks off. He did not talk at all about Seize the Gray. I was like, wait, what? He's still training that horse, right? Like, he didn't make any comment about Seize the Gray. And there were actually a lot of, you know, like the My Racehorse people were there. And I was like, that's weird. Now, whatever. I mean, you know, I could give him a pass, right? I mean, he might have just had a long morning and he was tired and wanted to get out of there. But I just thought it was interesting. He was like, let me talk about my horse. And then he only spoke about Just Steel. So whatever, read into that or don't read into it. I am getting a note here. This is like live breaking news from Rhonda at Equibase, who's sharing that the Maryland Jockey Club has just issued a revised Preakness morning line. So let me see. I mean, we could all try to see if we could pull this up, or Taylor, if you have it, or if anybody has it, you know, text it to me or share it. Otherwise, we can we'll share it in the information that comes along with the landing page here for this. But so I don't see it anywhere in front of me.
I'm watching the Muth imagination work while you look for that.
Okay.
I'm just looking at it May 10th. They were heads up together, but it was pretty clear that they really had to ask imagination to keep up. I mean, Muth could have blown by him by 10 lengths if he wanted to in the morning. So I think that still tracks. Imagination several lengths behind Muth, as we've seen in his races, and he kind of looks like that in the morning too. It wasn't the best work from Imagination, if I'm honest. They did have to kind of ask him for it.
Okay. So I'm still searching here. I'm not, wait, let's see, maybe, no, yeah. No, I'm not seeing it right now. We could, we could try to, I'm not seeing it. So look, I think we had this discussion the other day. I guess maybe let me just quickly, who goes off as the favorite? I mean, is it Mystic Dan at this point, Christina?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's the Derby winner. It holds a lot of weight and he's a great horse. And so, yeah, I think Mystic Dan is your first choice. I think Imagination ends up the second choice and Tuscan Gold gets bet down to third at about 7-2, most likely. I think he comes down pretty significantly.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're on it. The odds, we now have the revised odds. Thank you, Rhonda. So your new morning line favorite is Mystic Dan at 8-5. Your second choice is Imagination at 3-1. And your third choice is Catching Freedom at 7-2. Just run down from 1 through 9. Your horses, Mugatu 20-1, Uncle Heavy 20-1, Catching Freedom 7-2, Mystic Dan 8-5, Seize the Gray 12-1, Just Steel also 12-1, Tuscan Gold 9-2, Imagination 3-1. So I think Scott would sign up for that 9-2 on Tuscan Gold right now.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, there's a world where it's close. I mean, just because, I mean, yeah, Mystic Dan, I believe that's going to be 8-5, 2-1 range. There'll be a lot of money there, and people are gonna not let anybody get too far away. And with a red on one of the bombs, and you've got Catching Freedom for sure is going to take money with Flavian Pred, and I mean the Baffert supporters are all going to move on to the blind Baffert bettors are all moving on to one horse now. So I mean you've got a world in which, I mean, I would say it'll probably be closer to 4-1, maybe 7-2, but we'll see. 9-2 would be great.
Yeah, it could be. And somebody brought up the point the other day too, right? Obviously, the My Racehorse bettors will be fully behind Seize the Gray, and you could see the price being shorter than 12-1 there, including for the case that you made, Scott, about Seize the Gray being more forwardly placed and potentially having that advantage if the pace is sort of slower or slowish early, that could benefit him as well. So all right, well, we'll see how it all shakes out. Just wanted to mention again that there are a number of promotions right now that you should take advantage of on Equibase. There's a $99 special for unlimited quarterly pass performances. That's $99 using promo code TCEQB99. And you can also get unlimited quarterly access to Rates Lens, all the features that you've seen here throughout this show, using promo code TCRL99. That's $99 for a quarterly pass. And then as we mentioned at the top too, FanDuel Racing running a $500 no sweat first bet promotion for new customers. If you don't have an account, now is the time to sign up and make your first bet of up to $500 risk-free. So we thank them for supporting the show, and I thank my friends Corey Patton, Scott Coles, Christina Blacker for joining me and for sharing these insights, updated insights on Preakness Stakes weekend. We're all super excited. We wish you a lot of luck out there. We'll see you next time.